Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another installment of Flyer Gonna Flyer, post-draft edition. It has been a crazy last 2 weeks since our last full episode. Flyers made a trade, as we went over. Trevor Zegras is now in Philly, and the draft has come and gone, and we now know what the future in Philly is going to look like on top of the prospects that we already had. We're going to be going over the draft today and our thoughts, what we agreed with, what we disagreed with, what we'll actually grade them, maybe even throw some future line combinations out there possibly. Not only that, we'll be talking about some free agency as well. But we got a good show for you today. With me is one of my two awesome, gracious co-hosts. You know him, you love him, Mr. Eric Martino. Eric, how you doing today, brother?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I'll be honest. I'm playing a little hurt today.
I was gonna say, don't lie. We know you're like maybe on 60% right now.
Yeah, man. Had a wedding last night. I'm feeling a little busted this morning, so I'm powering through, man. I'm powering through. You know what? You can play hurt. It's fine.
Eric came into this podcast via Adam Schefter questionable. They had it as an abdominal injury, but was expected to participate, and he will be here today. Mr. Bascow may or may not be joining us at some point. He's got some personal family stuff he's doing right now. So if he comes, awesome. If not a big deal. We'll have him next episode. But we got some draft talk to go over. So we weren't originally elated that the Flyers dropped from 4 to 6 when the draft lottery happened almost 2 months ago. But I think this class ended up pretty well, don't you think? So one of the things that we were all, I'd say, in agreement with was us wanting to avoid Brady Martin. And we had our live stream for the draft, at least for the first round. If you haven't already, if you want to see our reaction, check it out on the Don't Puck With Media YouTube channel. 4.5 hours long, NHL. Get your shit together for future drafts. Never do this bullshit decentralized drafting crap again, because that was absurdly long for no damn reason whatsoever. But
can I say something on that? I saw a post from before the draft, and somebody bragging, they're going to do it NFL style. It's going to be so fast and blah, blah, blah. And it was totally the opposite of that.
It should have been a clean 3 to 3.5 hours, and that's it. And instead, what was over 4.5? So much lost, wasted time.
You notice that the first 16 picks were about 2.5, almost 3 hours. And then the last 16, I think they realized, crap, this is taking way too long. We got to find a way to speed it. And it was the second half of the draft was quicker than the first half. Still was freaking slow as a whole, but it was quicker. And one of the things Rick mentioned on the stream that I wholeheartedly agree with, when there is a trade made, don't reset the clock. Make them make that pick. They know who the hell they're getting. Or at the bare minimum, limit it to a minute.
It's like they traded up to get the pick, and they don't know who they're going to pick. Are you kidding me?
If they're making the trade, don't wait. Let the first team have the first 3 minutes to eliminate. The moment they know that they're trading the pick, stop the clock, hit the damn buzzer. That's probably the only thing I didn't like about this draft. I like the red button. Cool. I thought that was cool. But yeah, just go up and announce the pick. You had an extra 20 minutes to the draft alone just with that nonsense.
Hour for sure. Half hour.
Yeah.
For
sure. I don't remember. One of the last ones, the team that traded their pick went the full 3 minutes. Then it exceeded the 3 minutes. Then Gary Bettman comes, pushes the button, and gives the next team another 3 minutes.
Was that the Blackhawks pick, I believe?
I think it was. It was one of the later ones. I'm like, yes. 10 minutes to do one pick? Like, come on, guys. Let's get serious.
A moron planned that out.
And then they had all of these players having the interviews. And, I liked here. I got it maybe with the first handful of picks. Listen, especially Matthew Schaefer, what that poor kid went through. God bless him. I said it on the live stream. I'll say it here too. I wholeheartedly am rooting for that kid to succeed. So and I assume that they talked to him off screen beforehand to make sure asking questions like this would be okay. But
he's 18 years old. That's fair.
Yeah.
Sorry.
For the first couple picks, this should have, if they were going to do this, it should have been limited to maybe like the first 10. And then after that,
Right.
good normal.
I said that in the stream. I thought, the first 10 picks, top 10, and then they're going to speed it up. Yeah.
Eh,
Just got
But-
slower and slower.
Jesus.
Yeah, that was just a little draft minute on what we thought of this mess. Like they need to go back to what it was last year and the year before that, because this is, I hope, a one and done. This was just not needed.
It's the NHL. It's probably not a one and done.
Players need to be there to shake the general manager's hand, and that's it. Like they have a cool interview off screen, then let the next team pick. But anyway, we're here to talk about the Flyers draft. And Flyers come up on the clock. First 5 picks went as followed. Matthew Schaefer was 1. Number 2 was Michael Misa. 3 was Anton Friedel. No real surprises there. And then Desnoyers went 4. And then to all of our delight, Brady Martin went 5 as we got to avoid that bullet. Because me, Eric, were both in mutual agreement. That was not who we wanted the Flyers to go after. And we had fear that it was a possibility. So pick 6 comes along. You have Hagens on the board. You have Martone on the board. You have Jake O'Brien on the board. There's a handful of guys they had to choose from. I like Charles Barkley making the pick. That was pretty cool.
That was nice.
Flyers go with right winger Porter Martone from Peterborough, Ontario, out of the OHL. Played last year for the Brampton Steelheads, is a very girthy power forward, strong in front of the net, can create plays with his skill and size. Comps for him have gone as around Mikko Rantanen, Matty Tkachuk, Brady Tkachuk, a lot of bigger, girthier players. And, as a whole, I like the pick. My preference was James Hagens, and I'm not going to say that I wouldn't have. He wasn't my number 1, but it was like this 1-2. Martone, I think, has an overall higher ceiling than James Hagens. I only said Hagens for the fact that I felt like his playmaking and speed would have been a glove fit for a guy like Michkov, but at the end of the day, you have added some real legitimate size to this lineup. Now, the thing with Martone is he is a right wing. So if you put him and Michkov on the same line whenever he is ready, one of them's going to have to play in the off wing. I think me and Eric are in mutual agreement that would likely be Martone if you have to end up doing that, which is fine. I think either one of them could do it. But the thing about Martone's game that really stands out to me is just how strong he is with the puck and how good he is at just battling off defenders when he has the puck. Stuff like that you can't teach. It's about having your strength, snarl, and physicality. And one of the cool things when he was interviewing Danny Briere, he seemed like he wanted to be drafted here. He had a Claude Giroux poster. He chirps like a Konechny and a Giroux. That just sounds like a Flyer to me. So this pick here, in my opinion, I give it an A. Great pick by Danny. Was maybe a top 3 talent in the draft. I think he's going to fit like a glove here. You addressed the need, even if it wasn't the number 1 need, of adding some legitimate future size to this lineup. What did you think, Eric?
Well, look, going into the draft, I really, really wanted the Flyers to end up with a center. Like, I'm sure, like all Flyers fans as well as yourself, I'm sure we all did, And we were kind of like hoping, like especially after we lost in the lottery and we ended up 6 instead of 4. We were like all, I guess, hoping and praying, come on, like one of Desnoyers or Hagens or Frundell or fall to us, like one of the top centers, And like you stated, like I just really, really, really didn't want the Flyers to take Brady Martin. Like again, I just want to say it's not that I think Brady Martin's going to be a bad player in the league or that he's no good, or it's just that at 6, it made, with all the talent that would be available, it just made no sense to go Brady Martin.
Yeah.
So, and I think on previous pods I mentioned, I go, if there's one player that the Flyers select over one of those centers that I'd be fine with, is Porter Martone. And look, and that's exactly what happened. Flyers go up, well, not go up because they weren't there, but it was Flyers' turn to pick, and look, Higgins was there. Hey, because Nashville went went Brady Martin. I don't know why, but okay, whatever. You do
Thanks,
you,
Trotz.
Nashville. Yeah, you do you, Nashville. That's fine. We'll see. But yeah, no. So that's it. It's our turn, and Higgins is right there, but so is Martone. And look, they went Martone, and I don't have any problem with that. Like I said, if there was one player I thought that that I would be fine with drafting over one of the elite centers or like the top centers would be him because like he's an elite talent. But he's an elite talent on the wing. And that's a lot of what I've been reading or hearing is that's what it is. And even I read in some places that like the only reason why he wouldn't be like a top 3 pick is because he's a winger instead of a center. So like teams obviously covet centers high more than they do wingers. So look, this could work out really well for us. This could be just another guy that just falls in our lap, and we didn't even have to like move up to get him. And I really like it. Like, look, he adds size on the wing. That's an added plus. You know, he like I've heard like he might not be not the most physical guy for his size, but he still uses his size correctly. But like also that he's one of the better playmakers in the draft. Like he's one of the top playmakers in this draft, and he like you could make plays from the wing. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
And like, look, when we talk about like, look, he's probably gonna have to play the off wing. But how many years did Claude Giroux and Voracek play together on the same line? And they were both like Giroux's a right hand shot playing the left, and Voracek's a left hand shot playing the right. So you can have the same thing in the future with with Mishkov and Martone. Well, you know, because again, Mishkov is a left shot, but he prefers playing the right side. So you can have those guys together for years to come, and like I'm excited about it. Honestly, I'm really excited. I'm glad like they chose Martone. Like even like O'Brien. Like I was at one point I was scared. Like it's not again. O'Brien's not something that like I don't know him that well, but I'm just saying like him for me would have been a risky pick. So I'm really glad that they went Martone at 6.
It's funny, too, you bring up Giroux and Voracek, because I believe Giroux was drafted into the league as a right winger, eventually transitioned over to center, and then the later stage of his career ended up playing as a left winger that just became a faceoff specialist. So it just shows you can move guys around the lineup where they can stick. Look at Tyson Forster. The guy has been a right wing when he was drafted and has played practically the majority of his career at left wing and was the second leading goal scorer on this team this year. So I wouldn't read too much into people worrying about the fact that the guy might be playing his off wing. He's talented. The really legitimate talents aren't going to let that hamper them. They're going to thrive under that and find ways to make their game excel and succeed despite that. There are plenty of examples where guys have played at off wings or even off position and ended up succeeding. Hell, they moved Michkov over to left wing, and we know how special of a talent he is. You put him with Konechny and Coots for the last quarter of the year, and that ends up being the best part of the season. He had a little bit of talent on his line, and he suddenly is playing like the star that we know he's going to eventually become. And he did that at the left wing. So you can keep guys from their off positions and still expect close to, if not the same exact success. So I'm actually very glad you mentioned that, Eric.
But
Go
like
ahead,
the only sorry, just quick. The only thing I don't think it starts to become worrisome, but we have a lot of fucking right hand shots though. Like at a certain point, like yeah, you could have guys play off wing, but like you can't have like 12 wingers, or like sorry, 8 wingers all
the
right.
Philadelphia right wingers.
Like come on, like now we have Forster, we have Martone, we have Konechny. Mishkov wants to play the right side, like Brink, and it's like at a certain point, like we do need some natural lefties, so just gotta get on that. Well, at least like Gabrankin, and if I'm not mistaken, Barkey's a left shot too, so
He is.
so at least we got a couple that are coming.
Is Bump a left shot or is he a right?
Who? Sorry,
is Bump a left shot or is he a right?
I think he's a left. I might be wrong.
Might have to check in with that. Oh, and we have been joined by our third and awesome co-host, Mr. Jamey Baskow. Jamey.
Hey, aloha. What's going on, mahalo?
What's up, Jamey?
Hey,
How
aloha. Yo, you
drafted?
guys are kicking some butt. Eric, I like your takes. Alex, I like your takes. Man, Flyers had an awesome draft.
Well, since you're here, Jamey, let's ask you. We were just going over the first pick. What did you think of Porter Martone?
A pain in the ass.
Good way to answer it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's something that the Flyers have craved for years. I mean, we've talked about it before on multiple shows, right? Especially like Eric and you in particular, Alex. The Flyers haven't had a pain in the ass like Porter Martone probably since Jake Voracek. He's very tough, relentless on the puck. He's just really tough to move off the puck. He's very good on a power play for that very reason. I mean, he just breezes into the zone with ease, sort of like Jake did. He was so good at carrying the puck. And that's something that the Flyers have missed on the power play. Why has the power play been an Achilles heel? There's two reasons. They haven't had a puck carrier that could enter the zone with ease, like a Porter Martone. And they haven't had a puck carrier that is tough to move off the puck, but he's all over the ice. Like he could go down low, create, his net front presence is there, sort of like Jake will move to the net and then do this saucer pass because, a player or two is coming at him, do a saucer pass right to the tape, and boom, you got a goal. It's probably Mafia Mitchkov probably be standing in front of the net. You know what I mean? Like it's something like that the Flyers needed in particular on the power play. I saw not just with him, but Shane Van Sage and stuff like that. You got these pain in the ass players, to take. And I think one of the reasons is because the Flyers power play has been brutal, for years. And Danny Briere and Brent Flair obviously knew that. Brent Flair's been with the organization for years, you know what I mean? And it's something that they probably honed in on, and that's probably why you saw the Flyers draft with a bit of size. I don't think I agree with Flair. I don't think that was, I just think that was just by coincidence. I agree with him. I don't think that was, okay, let's draft size. It's obvious that Porter Martone was their player from the get. So if they had the fourth pick, they originally had the fourth pick. I think that they did the research because they were out of it for so long. Did the research. They slated as 4. That was their guy all along. You know what I mean? And then when they moved 2 slots, that's why Danny Briere, if we go all the way back to those pressers, had trouble sleeping, is because they really thought they had Porter Martone. And then he realized, we went down 2 slots. He was depressed for 2 days. You remember him saying that?
Yeah.
He was depressed, and now he's come at peace with the 6th overall pick. I think if they thought that they would get Porter Martone at 4, and then all of a sudden their hopes and dash are crashed, so they got to get to know these other players. You know what I mean? So I could definitely see him being their guy.
It's funny, too, that you met. First of all, I love your take when it comes to the power play because that just falls back on what I was bringing up before you hopped on. The thing that stood out to me the most about Martone's game that I love him is how hard it is to knock him off the puck. How he uses his skill, his size and physicality to hold onto the puck and entering the zone. And they haven't had a guy like that since Voracek, who was like 215, 20 pounds of absolute girth. So stuff like that really can't be taught. It just comes with your natural hockey sense in body size. So I love that about him. And the other thing I want to bring up with Martone, too, that you just mentioned is the sheer fact that they're going to be able to have more legitimate threats now on this power play. Like a Martone, imagine this power play. I don't know if it'll be opening night, but maybe even later into the season or at worst next season. I think realistically, maybe he spends a year developing before they bring him up. But you have a first power play of Martone, Mitchkov, Konechny, Drysdale, and maybe a Forster, or there's a few different guys you could potentially use, or a Couturier just to help with face-offs. This power play could jump very quickly just for this one draft pick. To have a guy who can help bring the puck into the zone.
So I wanted to allude on that since you mentioned it. He is in the final running for Penn State. Penn State's in the final running for his services. But that doesn't mean he has to go there. And he hasn't committed yet. And he hasn't committed to any university for that matter. Same thing like James Higgins. James Higgins didn't commit to Boston College either, he said to me in an interview. And the reason and I think Martone's the same, although the question wasn't asked, he wanted to see what organization would take him and where he'd be slated. And with Brent Flair saying that he could play on the left, I wonder if they're thinking that he can make the team out of camp, play on the left have Zegras down the middle with Mitchkop. That's fucking one, excuse my language, but that's one crazy line.
Did Jamey just swear?
I did.
No,
Oh my God.
Hit the breaking news sounder for that one. I think it's worth it. Maybe just swore. Breaking news.
I think you can tell I'm pretty pumped for that pick, right?
It's funny too. You mentioned that. So before in the last hour before the draft, Anthony Sanfilippo actually brought this up. That the Flyers were suddenly really considering more on Martone.
Yeah.
It was right around 6 o'clock, I think he tweeted.
It was a great tweet. Great. Yep. It was fantastic.
And then he comes out and says the next day that the Flyers were fucking stoked when Nashville, like myself and Eric, drafted Brady Martin. And listen, if you haven't seen it yet, Jamey, when we did the live stream for this, I started jumping up and down in the room, acting like Daniel Bryan, screaming, yes, I was so happy that Nashville drafted Martin. I wanted to avoid that at all costs. But listen.
That's funny.
Overall, great pick. Does anyone else have anything else to add on Martone before we move on to the next part of the draft?
No, I don't think so.
All right. So, Flyers had 22 and 31, or so we thought. Because around pick 12, the unthinkable happened. Danny Briere trades up with the team. If you told me this the day before, I would have laughed in your face. With the Pittsburgh Penguins of all teams, trading picks 22 and 31 to land pick 12. And then they land center Jack Nesbitt, which was interesting. Left shot center, 6'4", 185 pounds, a lot of size on this kid. Pretty much a point per game guy in the Windsor Spitfires the year before. This is a kid that really pretty much doubled down on the Flyers, even though Danny won't admit it, but doubled down on the Flyers' adamant need for size in this draft. And they were very consistent with this. We'll talk about more in the second round. But, Eric, let me start with you this time. Originally, we both had our thoughts on the Nesbitt trade. But 2 days later, let me ask you, what are you thinking of the Nesbitt trade up now?
Well, look, I'll be honest. When the Flyers made that trade, you all, like, Alex, you know who I wanted, man. Like, I really, like, this leading up to the draft, man, I really, really, really wanted the Flyers to draft Keyshawn Aitchison. I thought he would have been just a great fit on our back end, just like running havoc on the rest of the Metro and the league for us for years to come. And look, at the end of the day, they traded up and they selected the big center and Nesbitt. I'm like, look, we lack. I get it. We lack center depth. And he's a big, especially on size, especially after we acquired Zegras. So, and like I said, Luchenko is not a huge guy either. He's like 5'11", maybe 6. So we needed to add someone with size. And everything I read about the kid, like, look, he has to work on his skating. That's fine. The Flyers think that they could fix anybody's skating. So, and look, they have. So, I'm not saying it's impossible. And just the only thing I'm not sure about Nesbitt is what is his offensive upside. Like, could he be everything I've read and I've seen, I don't think he's gonna be a 1C. So he probably has middle 6 center potential, but then again, who knows, right? Like, some of these guys, you just don't know. They just explode for whatever reason the next level. And so, like, I don't mind the pick because like we've said also, it's like no matter what mock you look for this draft or whatever, like, everybody was just, it's like after about like number 8 to 10, no one knew where anybody was gonna go. It's like throw a dart. You just, okay, like it just goes by personal preference. And again, I like the pick. I'm not saying I don't like the pick. It wouldn't have been my pick. And what sucks also is that the Islanders got fucking Aitchison, so We still have to have him in our division.
And Eklund, they had a great first round.
They did, honestly, yeah.
They did. They did great work. They did. And I thought Pittsburgh did too. And I'll get that out.
Well, me and Alex might disagree.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't think Pittsburgh had a great first round personally. But anyway, continue. We'll talk about Pittsburgh in a minute.
Oh, well, look, again, I want to see what's gonna happen at the dev camp and rookie camp and everything, how he looks, and again, I don't hate the pick. We need it. It is an organizational need that we address. And like some people think that the offense might end up developing and might be there. And look, at the end of the day, if he ends up even being like a middle six or a 2 or something, and then we still have Luchenko and we still have Zegras, and I want to bring this up, and it's something I thought about the other day, and because everyone's like, "Oh, you need that number one center. You need that number one center." And you know what? I was thinking back to the 2010 team, the Flyers that we made the cut. Okay, that basically, I think if we would have had a legit goalie, I honestly believe that we beat Chicago in that final.
Agreed.
100%.
If Ray Emery would have never got hurt, and we would have had him in the playoffs,
they would have won.
They would have won. They would have won. But now, who was their number one center that year? It was Mike Richards. Was Mike consider Mike Richards a legit number one, like elite number one center? No, I'd like personally, no, I wouldn't. Then you had Jeff Carter, and then you had Daniel Briere. Like all guys that you would never consider are legit first line centers, but they're all really good twos. So I could win as long as you have good depth on the middle. You can't, like, let's say a 2 and a 3 and a 3. No, but if you have 3 solid twos, I think you could succeed that way. Especially the way the Flyers are building on the wing with the talent that we have on the wing. I think you don't need that legit number one, but the Flyers do have to address the defense. I think we do need that stud in the back end, though.
That I agree with for sure. Jamey, how about you? What did you think of the Nesbitt pick?
Well, the reason I said the Flyers moved up because obviously Roger McQueen was Pittsburgh's guy. You know, that's the reason why Pittsburgh traded back. Roger McQueen was their guy all along. Sort of like, you know, how, you know, the Flyers, you know, at 4, Porter Martone was obviously their guy. Moved to 6, Porter Martone, they didn't think would be there, so they were looking elsewhere, but he happened to be there, so they selected him because he was their guy all along. Jack Nesbitt maybe was their guy. Maybe they thought that he'd slide to 22. Maybe they thought that he'd have to have to trade up to 17 with the Isles or 18 or something of that nature. Maybe not as high. And here you go. They got a tidbit saying that Vancouver was interested in picking Nesbitt at 15. So then they moved up to 12 to select Nesbitt. The reason I think it was a good draft for Pittsburgh, for one, was because they need all the assets they can. So that was asset management, them trading back. So I think Kyle Dubas, their guy, was gone. Why not trade and get one extra selection in the first round? That's why I said I thought that they had a good draft in general in the first round in particular. I thought that was smart. You know, if the Flyers did that and say Porter Martone was obviously their guy at 6, trading back wouldn't have been a bad thing if somebody wanted to trade up for 6, get more assets and select, you know, a decent player. The reason this draft is known as not so good after the top 6. It's like not so good. It's just it falls heavily after the top 6. You know what I mean? Top 7, top 8, somewhere around there. You know, is what most scouts, most pundits had it as. It wasn't like flashy, you know, the latter rounds and stuff like that. It wasn't like, I guess they didn't expect many stars to come from the 2nd, 3rd, 4th. It wasn't as deep as it has been in previous years when this was supposed to be a deep draft to start. It didn't come that way, I guess. Nonetheless, Nesbitt, it wasn't on my radar. I thought of Eric immediately. I actually thought that they were going to select Kim Atchison. That's what I thought they were moving up for Atchison. I was like, oh, okay, they're getting a D-man. And here then they select Nesbitt. I'm going to be honest. He wasn't on my radar at all. At all. I never even sniffed Jack Nesbitt. I did absolutely zero research on Jack Nesbitt. So to be honest with you, he's 18 years old. That's what I look at, right? He's 18. He's young. How many players at the age of 18 have skating issues? Tons, right? Tyson Forster had skating issues. I'm going to be honest. I don't say, oh man, he's an elite skater. If he was an elite skater, he would have been in top 5. He's not. You know what I mean? Obviously, he's not a top 5 pick because he's not elite skater. He's an average skater, and that's not so bad. Like, people are killing this pick. Oh, his skating. Just like Tyson Forster got killed. Forster got killed the same way. Oh, his skating's horrible. And then, I had Paul Matheson on our show, a few days later, who's his skating coach, and he was like, skating? He doesn't really have skating issues. Does he need to work on skating? Absolutely. He was like, but name one player that doesn't have to work on their feet work or have to work on, and stuff like that. That puts me at ease here. I don't care. It's not that I don't care about his skating. I don't see that as a focal issue. These are kids. Like, just kids, 17, 18, 19 years old. Man, my kids are almost their age. My kids have skating issues, it's just
I have
the
skating
way.
issues. I'm 33.
My daughter too has skating.
I mean, there's not many prospects that don't have skating issues. And the Flyers are being killed for this pick. What he brings is intangibles. That's what he brings. He brings size. He brings that bulky, stocky guy that's really hard to move off the puck. And that's what the Flyers have craved. We just said it. The Flyers have craved a player that could come in the zone, tough as nails, body one. They're looking for playoffs here. They're looking for in the playoffs. What happens? The ice gets smaller. You have to be able to move and muscle people off of you or pucks, board battles. Every battle. I mean, guys are laying their bodies on the line. That's what Jack Nesbitt brings. He brings those type of intangibles, but with a high scoring ability. I mean, seriously, who the heck would have thought, for one, that you could pick up some of these guys that put points on the board this late, this late, you know what I mean? At 12 even, who would have thought that you could get Martone at 6 who put 100+ points, that's freaking insane, so no, I don't put much into skating, and stuff like that. His skating will come. They have coaches to coach how to skate. And like Eric brought up, that they've had Flyers, there have been some prospects in the past that have had skating issues. Some worked out, some didn't. Matthew Strome was one that didn't work out for the Philadelphia Flyers. Isaac Ratcliffe skated okay. That wasn't his problem. It was just he couldn't put everything together. And Isaac Ratcliffe was knocked for his skating. I thought he actually skated well in his one and only game with the Flyers. He was one and done. So I don't, I don't see Tyson Forster at skating. Look where he's at. Now he's he could be a top 6 winger on almost any team in the NHL. Skating is not as worrisome as what it was, say, 10 years ago. They have coaches for this. They have, they're going to go through developmental, and it's not like the Flyers have to rush him. I like this pick because this saves Luchenko in my eyes, right? What that means is the Flyers don't have to rush Luchenko. The Flyers don't have to rush Nesbitt. They don't have to rush anybody now. You know what I mean? Whereas they penned as Luchenko making the team out. Now he could go back for another year at golf. They don't have any reason to rush. That's why I like this Nesbitt pick, because I think that they could do the same thing with him. Let him dictate when he's going to crack the NHL. It doesn't have to be this year. It doesn't have to be next year. Shoot, it doesn't have to be the following year after that even. You know what I mean? We've made that mistake in the past with Daniel Zubras. Let him do his own thing. Let him dictate when he enters the NHL. I think it's a great pick by the Flyers. I've come to like it a lot. I wanted Kim Atchison. I really thought that's who I thought they were moving up for. But you know what? I wanted James Higgins too. So that's not a problem now. But you got a great player in Porter Martone, and now they're getting a great player in Nesbitt.
Hell of a rant there, Jamey. I like a lot of your points that you made there, especially the skating rant, because that can't be stressed enough how much people overrate skating for 17 and 18-year-olds. These kids are exactly that, kids. It'll come with time, development, coaching, all of that. It will come into play as these kids mature and marinate a little more. Skating is such an overrated trait to have at this stage. Is it an asset to have if you already have it? Yeah, sure. But if you don't have it, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. But anyway, on to the actual Nesbitt take. I'll be honest, as Eric said, when the pick was actually made, I was suspect about it. But as more information came out, especially the part where Sam Flippo brought up Vancouver for sure was taking him at 15, and Detroit was even pondering him at 13. They weren't as certain with the spot, but they were definitely looking at him a bit at that position. Nesbitt's a big body. They added some size down the middle, which is definitely something good about this. And number 2, Danny Briere got aggressive to get a guy he wanted. And whether he pans out or not, I respect the fuck out of him because it shows balls and aggression. It's just something that Danny got unwrongfully criticized for some time. That he is proving the naysayers wrong over the last few months. He is traded away since February? Scott Lawton, Joel Farabee, Morgan Frost, and Ryan Poehling are all gone, who are all part of this roster. That's a quarter of your forward core. Actually, that's a third of your forward core. I'm sorry. All gone now since February. So that right there shows me, and now you add a move like this where Danny showed the balls to trade up, got a guy with size. One person I saw on social media, I remember who it was, stated that he's a big Scott Lawton. And I'm like, why are we already making assessments of what a guy's future is going to be? Even if he ends up a high-end 3C, you got a guy with size like that who can make real impact, especially when you're in the playoffs where size and physicality are something you're going to need in order to succeed in the playoffs. Yes, was that maybe a bit of a reach at 12 to only get that? Maybe, but it was Danny's guy, and we don't even know for sure that's what he's going to end up being. What I like about Nesbitt especially is how strong he is and how much he wins puck battles along the boards. That's one of the things I was reading about him. And he still put up a point per game in his final year in juniors. So that can't be overlooked, too. It's not like he doesn't have offensive flair. I want to see and another thing that you also mentioned, Jamie, I like, they don't going to rush these guys. That was something I was asking about when we had our mock draft episode. When I originally said the Flyers in a trade for Marco Rossi, that's obviously not happening anymore, especially with the acquisition of Zegras, which, mind you, Jamie, I do want to ask you about that once we're done with this part of the draft. What I like about this is they get to let these guys marinate. You don't have to rush anything. You have Cates under contract for 4 years. You're going to extend Zegras. If when these guys are ready to come up, you can maybe trade one or two of your wingers away, like the Brink or a Tippett or something like that. Maybe move Coots over to the wing because we know that contract's not getting moved. And then eventually bring these guys up, like a Luchenko, like a Nesbitt, whenever they're ready. Martone is a different case because he's going to be here in at the latest a year. But the kids like Luchenko, Nesbitt, Berglund, who doesn't get talked about enough. If you want to find room for Bump or Grabankin on the wing, you're going to be able to marinate these guys at the pace you want to. And that can't be stressed enough. I like Danny's aggressiveness.
I do too.
I'm looking forward to see how he develops. Anyone else have anything else to add on Nesbitt before we move into the second round?
I just want to say something quick regarding the skating. Just have a question. Like, how many burners did I know this is a bit recent, like recency bias, I guess, but how many burners did Florida have on their team? They're not a fast team, Florida.
Hey, that's a great point. That's a great point, man.
Actually.
So, like, you don't need a bunch of burners as long as you play a solid system. You have the right talent, and you have like physically aggressive players that can like just shut you down. You don't.
Their version of a burner is a 37-year-old Brad Marchand.
Exactly, like these guys are not the fleetest of foot, but they play a system that allows them to just suffocate you, a hard forecheck. So you don't need these quote unquote burners. So like as long as you can skate in the league, you're fine. You're fine.
Well said. I agree. That's a very good point. Very good point.
Great point.
Hello to Jamie's son, by the way.
Oh yeah, that was Dylan. Sorry, he hurt his knee.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
He hurt his knee playing Connect 4. He hurt his knee playing Connect 4.
I hope he's all right. All right. So with that being said, before we move on to the second round, we talked about this on our special episode. I want to get your take on the Trevor Zegras trade, Jamey, because we didn't have an opportunity to ask you about it. So let's take a quick 3-4 minutes, give us your feedback, and then we'll move on to the second round. What did you think of the Zegras trade?
I'm going to steal a line from you, balls and aggression.
Love it.
Trades are hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Trades are so damn hard. He didn't even have to trade a first-round pick for Zegras. Like that. That's what's even more crazy. Right? I'm like, man. So they've had this in the works for numbers of years. You know what I mean? Him and the GM from Anaheim. Apparently, that's what Danny Briere said. He's been working, and they just couldn't come to a deal. But when you think about it, in Anaheim's eyes, Ryan Poehling, he was a reclamation project. Remember coming from Pittsburgh, he was done. He was one and done. You know what I mean? He came from Montreal, went to Pittsburgh. He's a reclamation project, much like Owen Tippett. And I think that's what Danny Briere has done well, is that these reclamation projects have surfaced under him. Tippett, yes, that was a Fletcher deal, that Tippett deal, getting Tippett, but he flourished under Danny Briere's regime here. Danny Briere took over shortly thereafter, So he's very familiar with reclamation projects. Zegras falls along those lines. He hit back 60-point back-to-back seasons. They're hoping he could be that guy. They're hoping he could resurface as a number one center. And with centers being so tough and, teams wanting so much for centers, it's worth it to take a shot for him. So in Anaheim's eyes, they're thinking they traded Ryan Poehling. They're thinking they traded a Ryan Poehling and got more assets for Ryan Poehling. Does that make sense? So, they traded Ryan Poehling and got, 2 other picks on top for the same player, Ryan Poehling. You know what I mean? So they're thinking that they did well, and I'm thinking that the Flyers kicked some ass. I'm sorry, but Zegras has all the billings, and he will have some playmakers, and that's one thing. I think this was a great trade for both teams. I think Anaheim is ready to take the next step, and this shows. Ryan Poehling going over there, he's been a good player for the Flyers. They're getting a solid player, in Ryan Poehling. Anaheim is. They're ready. They got Chris Kreider. They got all these young stars over there, and stuff. And the Flyers are the same way. They got all these young stars. Now they're ready to take the next step. So now let's make some moves here. Let's go after Trevor Zegras. I think Zegras will fit well in between Martone and Michkov. If Martone doesn't make it out of camp, fine. Send him to Penn State. That's fine. Okay, cool. They'll have Michkov off his off wing, which is no problem. Have Zegras down the middle, and then you have TK, on the right. Keep that together. I mean, Michkov and TK flourish together, with Coots. So if Coots could flourish with Michkov and TK, I'm sure Zegras can too. If they want to stick with Coots, and keep that line together initially, fine. But Zegras has a chance here to be a center. He's going to give every chance, to be a center. Yes, Rick Tocchet has the final say, like Danny Briere said, but I think he's going to be utilized as a center to begin, and rightfully so. Let Zegras prove them wrong that he can't be a center. Zegras still thinks he can. I think it's a hell of a deal. To me, it shows balls. It showed balls going in. But what was even better is when I look and they don't give up a first-round pick, I think it's an excellent deal.
Well said, Jamey. Well said. And you know what? It's ballsy. It's ballsy. That was the whole thing. You're taking a shot on a semi-reclamation project. And if you can get this guy to be a 70-plus point guy, it's a home run deal. Because you move the bottom six, probably a low-end third liner, high-end fourth liner, a second and a fourth, in which, mind you, the Flyers ended up just getting another second back anyway in the draft with another great trade we'll go over in a moment. And so you still had 4 second-round picks to use anyway. So yeah. I'm looking forward to where things go from here, but I'm very excited to see what Zegras can do, especially with the wingers that he's going to be able to play with.
Yeah.
But with that being said, let's move on to the second round. Flyers had an abundance of assets. Originally had 4 picks, then went back to 3 after the Zegras trade, and then went back up to 4 after Danny traded down 2 spots to get a second round pick. I still have no idea what Seattle was doing, but that's besides the point. Let's go over the second round as a whole. Just so we can save a little bit of time. First pick that they had was defenseman Amico.
Carter Amico.
Yeah. Big body. This kid is really, I think he's what, 6'4"? I want to say 6'5", 6'5". Carter Amico. Flyers getting over the U.S. National Development Team, PTSD. He is a really big, girthy defensive defenseman, like what this kid plays with a lot of snarl, a lot of grit. And he's from New England, so that he gets bonus points to me from that by itself. Westbrook native, so it'll be cool to see some New England blood out in Philly. Then, in my opinion, my second favorite pick of the whole draft, not favorite if you don't count Martone, Jack Murtaugh. And I for the second year in a row, I hit a pick in the Flyers mock draft, so I'm happy about that. This one I got right on the dot, pick 40. Jack Murtaugh, left shot, left winger. Funny you bring that up, Eric, how they're not getting too many left shot guys. I got one here in Murtaugh. This kid is a pistol. He has a very good offensive arsenal, and I think you're going to see it more over the next couple of years as this kid develops. They got a really legit natural left shot, left wing here who is going to mesh with this team, I think, when he comes in. He was projected by a lot of models to be a low-end first-round talent, probably in the mid to late 20s somewhere. So I think this was, in my opinion, their best value pick of the draft, not named Martone. I love the Murtaugh pick. Then, excuse me if I botched this next one because me and names never go eye to eye.
Van Saggy.
Dan Saggy.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Van
Pull the
Saggy.
name up, Rick, and help me out here.
Yeah, hang on. Give me a sec. There you go. Van Saggy.
Van Saggy. Yeah, there we go. Shane Van Saggy, right shot winger. I personally don't know too much about him. This wasn't one of the guys I did a lot of research on. But one of the things that's interesting that I read upon is for the third year in a row, the Flyers drafted the number one player in grip strength. This is the thing that Chaco had last year that they emphasized with the whole grip strength thing. When he was coming up, he had, I guess, a really good combine that helped shoot him up a little bit. So I don't know too much about him, but I've seen at least on Flyers Twitter a lot that they've liked this kid. So this pick is kind of, I'm not going to say it's a bad pick because a lot of people do like it. So I'm going to listen to the masses on this one. But this is a pick I'm not as familiar with. And the last pick was, I think it was Matthew Gard, if I remember correctly. Yes, Matthew Gard.
Matthew Gard. Yep.
Another center, left shot here. Pretty out of the Red Deer Rebels, out of the WHL. This kid here plays with a lot of size as well, as the Flyers have consistently emphasized in this draft. 6'5", 192 pounds. Another kid that's hard to knock off the puck. Good in the dot from what I've read too. Smart kid, good hockey IQ. Matthew Gar was another good pick here. So, Eric, let me start with you this time. What did you think of the second round as a whole? Like, what picks stood out to you? Which ones did you like the most? And what about the players did you like?
Well, when it comes to the second round, I feel like the Flyers went with motor, size, physicality, and potential upside. And like that's like I find that's the theme of all their picks that went in the second round. Look, I like it. I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna pretend to know like any of these guys. Like I did some limited research, and that's pretty much what I came out with. And like when I look at each guy's profile, I'm like, it's just the recurring themes. The only thing that I'm a bit surprised, and that I would have liked the Flyers to do, like you said, like Briere traded back up to get that fourth second round pick again. I really thought they were gonna go with a goalie. Like, I think 2-1 in the first round, so I think it was still Frolov and Ivan Kovic that were available in the second. I was sure they were gonna grab one of those two. And the one guy I really wanted them to grab that the Hurricanes did was Ryabkin. Like, I really wanted to take because if you draft Ryabkin, you're taking a chance on skill, because like everything you read about Ryabkin, this kid has all the skill in the world. It's just that he needs to get his shit together. So I figured with 4 second round picks, they would at least take a chance on him, especially with all the Russians that were accumulating on our team. I guess maybe he just didn't impress in the interviews or something, and they just really like red flagged the guy. But again, it's the only. But again, because you had that many picks, like just take a chance. Just take a chance. Like, so, but yeah, no, that really caught me a bit by surprise, and like we'll see. Like I like Jack Murtai. I don't even know how to pronounce it. I don't know if it's Murtal, Murtag. I don't know. I've heard it pronounced both ways. So
Murtaugh. I think
But
that's
It's a rare time I actually got the name right.
yeah, I think it's Murtaugh.
It's Murtaugh.
because I've heard it pronounced both ways, so I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, like he's probably one that I'm gonna keep my eye on. But or else, like, look, I don't mind their second round. Like we said, also they need a physicality, they need size, they need like, and again,
They definitely do.
Everything I read, high end motor. These guys like high end motor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, fine. Like we'll see, and hopefully, like, and that upside. What will their offense translate into becoming? So we'll see.
Fair points. A lot of size, a lot of motor, especially Murtaugh and Amico. I think those two define that. So
Yeah.
Good takes there, Eric. Jamey, what did you think of the second round?
I just thought it was. I thought it was okay. I thought that the Flyers got a banger in Van Sage, Marta. I thought those two players, in particular, are going to be very, very strong players, for them. I think Marta, he's a banger, like we've been mentioning, a pain in the ass. Van Sage, a pain in the ass. I think what the Flyers are addressing is that they, and have said it before over and over the past few years with Torts. And I think Torts honed in with Danny Briere, and this is probably why they focus so hard. Because Torts and Tocchet are similar coaches. They want to be tough to play against. And I think Tocchet had some direction with this draft. He wanted his team to become tough as nails, to become even tougher. Because if you're going to succeed in the second half of the year, we've seen the Flyers excel the first half of the year and not so much in the second half. And they start to, because they need that toughness still. They can't bang, as it gets later in the year for the last 30 or so games. You know what I mean? They just these players, they just wear out. They're done. They're gassed, and that could be because they've been trailing and trying to come up, so far in the standings. Nonetheless, I think it's very hard, so I think Tocchet had some direction, want to become tougher to play. Now, I am very empathetic to Flyers fans here because the Carter Amico pick, although I like it and I understand it, it is a stretch. He's a project bit because of his injury with the kneecap injury. Like that was a serious injury, so now Flyers fans are having some PTSD with Samuel Moore. You know what I mean? So I understand, why, some Flyers fans are worried about that selection. I actually wanted Malcolm Spence there. They passed up on Malcolm Spence.
The Rangers.
You know what I mean? And so I was shocked that they made that trade to move back. You know what I mean? And then select Amico. So I would have taken Malcolm Spence. I mean, and then it goes with Eric's sentiment too. I liked Rybakin. I did. I liked him. He's a first round talent. They could have got. He was arguably a first round talent. His character dropped him out of the first round, sort of like Shadir Sanders, right? And in the NFL draft, Shadir, he went to the 5th round when he could have been a first round talent if he would just shut his mouth. So it's sort of the same thing. Those issues linger. Some teams are scared to cut, but the Flyers had 4 selections to get Rybakin. So yeah, they could have taken a stab. Now he goes to Carolina, and they become tougher to play against. Now, can Rob Brindamore? Rob Brindamore ain't gonna put up for that crap. I'll tell you that right now. He is not going to put up for that crap, and he's shown that he won't put up for that crap. You know what I mean? He's traded off players in the past. Carolina, if he doesn't fit, goodbye. See you later. You know what I mean? It's a second round selection. Yeah, it sucks, but they took a stab. Now they get a first round talent for a team that could go over the top now with him. You know what I mean? So now we got to look at that. Like you mentioned, Malcolm Spence goes to the Rangers. These are all players that had prospects, good prospects that the Flyers could have had. now they have, a question mark with Amico. Like he'll be at Dev Camp next week. I want to mention that Amico's going to be there. He won't participate. He's going to be doing some soft skating. That'd be the first time he's back on the ice since he's had his surgery. He got hurt. I think it was I think what was it around February, March or something of that nature. And he has surgery shortly thereafter. So they've taken it easy. Yeah, but it's going to be a long road. But I'm going to be honest. I love that Van Sagi pick, man, and Murtaugh. Those two picks in particular made it for me. And that's why I thought the Flyers had a solid, a solid second round. I thought they could have had. I thought initially I said they had a hell of a second round. The more I think, I'm like, okay, Amico, I'm a little worried about because of his kneecap, injury. And I think passing up Rybakhin and passing up, Malcolm Spence, hopefully that doesn't come to bite the Flyers, in the rear end here in the future. Possibly. You think about it, Rybakhin, maybe he could play this year because he's a first-round talent. Who knows? You know what I mean? So I thought it was I thought it was a solid second round. I'm very, very high, like I said, on Van Sagi and Murtaugh.
For me, I give the second round an A-. I thought Danny had a fantastic second round. I glazed over the Murtaugh pick. I thought that was one of the, not just because I predicted it, but I thought that was one of the best value picks of the draft. What this kid has a complete arsenal and package, especially offensively. I think this kid is going to be part of this team's future one way or another. Amico, I can understand some teams worry. They asked him about his kneecap, and he said he feels like he's ahead of schedule. The kid's young, too. He's 18. The kids like that do heal a little bit quicker. I get a little bit of PTSD with San Moran, so I understand that. But, I liked what he was presenting before his injury. A lot of scouts had him as a potential late first-round pick before the injury happened, which led him to probably slide into the second. It's kind of similar, maybe not the exact same similarity, but I kind of comp his style of injury to what happened to Carter Bear a few months ago. He had the torn Achilles, and I feel like that's one of the toughest injuries to come back from, especially in hockey, especially with how much you push off with that. So I do wonder what his progression is. Hopefully he's not just saying that to just say that. But, I believe in what the kid was presenting before said injury. So hopefully he's back to the player he once was. Matthew Gard, I like what he presents too. Another big body, 6'5", adds to the left shot pool. Just again, continues to what the tone of this draft was size, grit, and snarl. And, they drafted more kids that were 6'4" and up than kids that were under 6 feet in general. They only drafted one kid under 6 feet, and that was Murtaugh, who was still 5'11". So overall, I think the second round was really good. Van Sagi, again, I don't know too much about him, so I'm going to take Jamey and Eric's word on it and the rest of Flyers Twitter. I think as a whole, they had a really good second round, and they had a really good draft. Some of the later picks too. I didn't really do too much research after round 2, but I think as a whole, I have the Flyers graded as right on the line of a B+ A- draft. Probably
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. Yeah.
Really, had them with the second best draft as a whole, only behind the Isles. And there was a few other. Yeah, I believe there was a few other team, reporters that had him somewhere in the top 5 as well. So I think they had a fantastic draft. I do. And I think that prospect pool is going to be shooting up the rankings. They were right in the middle of the pack. I expect them to be hovering right around the low part of the top 10 now.
Yeah.
So this future is getting bright. Future is definitely getting bright in Philly. Does anyone else have anything to add to those final first two rounds before we move on a little bit of free agency talk?
No, but actually, just quick, like to Jamie's points before, like I was saying previously, like like he said, like even the Amico pick, where because it's true. You're taking a big risk. Like, because even I was reading his profile and like he doesn't bring much offensively. He is pure defensive defenseman, and he has size. And again, coming back to skating, I was reading like he needs to work on certain aspects of his skating, but now he busted his kneecap. So like, is that gonna be, like I thought there would have been a perfect spot to maybe get like one of the top goalies, because I was looking at like the second round and like Frolov, who was projected to be one of the like some lists had him as the second best goalie, and you had him like I could have seen the Flyers go, let's say, with him instead of instead of Amico, and like the last pick, Matthew Guard. Like we drafted Nesbitt, who has the upside, who has upside. So like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But we drafted Jack Berglund last year, and we have these because I'm reading Matthew Guard's profile, I'm like, but this is a guy that projects to maybe be a third, fourth liner at best. I'm like, okay, maybe the offense because I was just reading now, and it's like he played first line minutes and he was barely up half a point per game. And like, I get it, again, he's 18 years old and everything, but like still, so like I just don't see the offense there, and that would have been the perfect spot to bet on talent with Ryabkin. So that's the only reason why the second round, and like I said, Murtaugh and Van Sagi, I like those picks because you have those high motor, physical guys. That's fine, that's cool. But like Jamey said, you pass on Spence, and there was even Daniil Prokhorov that was there too, like another big Russian that plays a hard game.
I forgot about him, to be honest with you.
And he went to the Islanders, so I'm just looking at him like,
another
great pick for the Islanders. Like the Islanders killed it this draft. But just to say, like that last pick where they took Matthew Guard, that would have been the perfect spot to take Ryabkin, because again, it's your fourth first round, it's your fourth second round pick. Just fucking roll the dice, man. Like, who cares? Like, this guy flames out. Who cares? Because
I think they liked door work because of door work. So they saw him a lot. They saw Guard a lot because obviously he played for Michigan State. So they liked Dorward all year. They had scouts over there. That's the only thing I could think of. But you're passing up talent. At the end, you may like that guy and looking okay, but you have a first round talent, drop, and Van Sagi and Murtaugh could have easily have been first round talents as well. Somebody's got to be left out of the first round. Okay, I get that, but still, nonetheless, I agree with you, Eric. I think that was a missed opportunity. That's what dropped me to like a B+ B for the Flyers for the draft. In my opinion, they would have went over the top, at least an A- if with one pick, Rybakhin. Yeah. If they would have taken Rybakhin with that last pick, that they had, I don't know. Yeah, that's what I would have as well.
The only thing.
If I have to grade, that's why if I have to grade their second round, same thing, I would give it like a B-, just because I'm not sold on Amico and Guard.
Understandable. With Rybakhin, I do wonder if maybe the Flyers, with all the recent negative PR hits they've had with some players, the whole Cutter Gauthier situation, Kolosov leaving, not having the transition that they'd hoped. Obviously, with what happened with Carter Hart off the ice, with all the negative PR things that have happened to this organization in recent memory, I wonder if the Flyers at least in the Flyers instance, I can't speak to the other 31 teams as to why he dropped this far, but maybe the Flyers wanted to push away from that just for the sheer fact that this guy had probably such bad interviews and didn't have the good work ethic that it could have been turned into another potential headache. That maybe Danny, at least in this instance, maybe wanted to stand away from that. That's the only thing I could think of, because the talent is there with Rybakhin, but I do wonder if recent negative PR issues that they've had may have made them look the other way. But
I get that 100%, and I understand. And if the Flyers had maybe just 1 or 2 second round picks, I could see okay, whatever, no, we won't get that chance. You had 4. And the guy's playing in North America. It's not like he's in Russia where he's because he played in the USHL last year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And he's going to college next year. He's going to NCAA next year. So it's not like he's going to be a guy that's going to be like, oh, you know what? No, I'm only going to come whenever I get a guaranteed NHL job, or getting him over here is going to be an issue. It's not. it's with him. It really was the character issues, and like they said, I think he showed up at the beginning of the season. He's not in great shape. But again,
Yeah.
if you think you could fix skating, these are issues that you could fix also.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and especially with all the Russians that we have now in Philadelphia, and be like,
Absolutely.
and like especially a guy like Mishkov, where he could go to this guy like me and you could be something special for years to come. Like, get your shit together and let's go. You know, so like, and that's what like I'm like that's why I was sure the Flyers were gonna take a chance on this guy.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Oh well.
Oh well.
All right, so let's transition to the second half of it. Well, second part, I shouldn't say half because I don't think it'll be quite as long as that. But the second part of our episode, free agency, starts in a mere 2 days. As we record this, technically less than 2 days because it's noon on the 1st of July. Free agency opens.
Yeah.
So free agency, the Flyers aren't really expected to be big-time players, but I could see them making a move or two. Jamey, let me start with you this time. Who would you like the Flyers, or what position would you like the Flyers potentially focus on in that position? Who's a guy or two you may have your eye on?
There's two positions. The two players that I keep in mind are Nate Schmidt, who brings a winning pedigree. He's an elder defenseman. He'd be a stopgap good defenseman until Rasmus Ristolainen is able to come back in November, December. And that way, that gives, them time to say, hey, Rasmus, just get healthy, come back whenever. It's not imperative, that you come back right now. But Nate Schmidt brings that winning pedigree that could help that locker room and maybe rub off like Nick Seeler has in there, or something of that nature. But he brings that winning pedigree that I like. Another one that I'd focus in on is Alex Lyon. The Flyers need, goaltending help. He could share the load with Samuel Ersson with no problem. It's not like you have to have Alex Lyon be the starter. So those are the two guys that I go after. Plus, he's very familiar with the Flyers organization, obviously. I like both.
Good calls, good calls. How about you, Eric? Who catches your eyes a little bit in free agency, but need-wide in the positions and players specifically?
Well, the one guy that I like, honestly, if I have to be honest, like this year in free agency, if I'm Briere, there's a good chance I pass on like most of what's available, because there's no one really that stands out that I'm like, oh man, we really need that guy. Because like you look at our team, like what do we need? We could use like a true number 1D. Is that guy available? Not really. Like unless you want to take a shot on Aaron Ekblad, but personally I wouldn't. Is the contract that he's gonna be looking for after 1 or 2 years? I think that thing is gonna look awful. Even with the cap going up, it's like with all the miles that he has on his body and the especially like now with all these 3 runs in a row plus all the injury history he has, I think someone is gonna overpay him and is gonna regret that in a couple of years. The only other defenseman I would consider, but honestly, what I've been hearing, like from Friedman and everybody, the numbers are, I think he's looking for $8+ million a year, is Gavrikov. But I don't know if I go that high with him. Again, but like because he's a pure defense, like he's mostly a defensive defenseman, but the guy is solid. He does everything. He's not excellent on one thing, he's just good all around. And if you could pair him, let's say with a Jamie Drysdale, and that's ends up being your first pair, if Jamie can take that next step, hit that next level offensively, and you put him with a guy like Gavrikov, and then you could slide Seeler down, let's say to your third pair or something, and have like let's say like you have Seeler and Grons on like a third pair, and have like a big physical third pair that just like grinds teams, and like I think that could be a legit defense. Obviously, you have York and Sanheim as your second pair. But again, the numbers that I'm hearing for Gavrikov seem a little too rich for probably what the Flyers are looking at. So when it comes to like forwards or defensemen, I think, or even 4C, sorry, like maybe they target a 4C also. Maybe like I was looking maybe like a Steven Lorenz or something, but we have so many in-house options. Like a Dorwart, or even maybe they'll give Dinwiddie a shot, or like a Gaucher or Abels. So we have those guys that at least in the time being could take that 4C spot, and or even like crazy thought, but like let's say Luchenko does make the team, and Luchenko's because you're gonna have Luchenko as your 3C because there's no point in having him in the fourth spot if he's gonna be in the NHL. There's no point. So
Yeah.
no. Maybe you start like I know maybe makes sound crazy, but you start Cates at 4C, you know, and but because if you could put Cates at 4C and then you give him like legit wingers, like you'll have Hathaway and either let's say it's a Peltier or Gabrankin makes a team. Like this is a fourth line that you can actually roll maybe 12 minutes a game.
Mm-hmm.
So like you'll have so that's why I don't really see them really in the market for a forward either. Goalie is the massive question mark. It's a huge question mark right now because you're like, okay, all the goalies that were available via trade now seem to be gone. Gibson got traded, and who's the other one that got? Anyway,
Demko, I think, was the other guy, but he's still technically
looks like Demko is gonna probably re-sign there.
Maybe. They said with Demko, if he's not signed by the start of free agency, they might trade him by Tuesday. So keep an eye on that for sure.
Yeah. But then again, like, do you want to take a chance on Demko? Like,
not for high-end talent with his knee issues.
Exactly, absolutely
Especially
not. And then what? Like, if he plays like let's say 5 or 6 games and then like busts his knee again, and then we're stuck. We're back where we were last year with Urson and Fedotov. So I don't know. Like, there's a few available. Like Jamie said, Alex Lyon. I wouldn't mind bringing back Alex Lyon.
Yeah.
But you have like Dan Vladar, Ilya Samsonov, Vitek Vanacek. Like these are guys that have starting experience in the league. That I think if you do tandem with Urson, like it could be a decent tandem. Like at least it's better than what you had last year.
Respectable, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you know what? I that's where I'm pretty much leaning. I think it's gonna be probably one of, like I said, Vladar Samsonov or Vitek Vanacek.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of those guys will probably be like a target the Flyers will like zone in on.
Fair, valid. For me, I think they make 3 signings, and I think their signings, number one is definitely goaltender. I think we're all in agreement there. Possible targets. You guys stole my thunder. Alex Lyon is the guy I think they get. A reunion with him makes a lot of sense. Familiarity with the organization. He's shown consistency both in Florida and Detroit. Right around low 900 save percentage. It's respectable, especially with how much goals have elevated in this league. If you're a 905 goalie, you're fair. You're good. You're average. You're a respectable goalie. And having him being a 1A, 1B tandem with Urson would not be bad. Hoper out in St. Louis was someone I was hoping for, but I think he just got re-signed, so he's gone. Demko, I would only trade for him as if you're giving up at most a second-round pick, and they don't even have next year's second, so it would have to be like a 2027 second. I don't even think I don't know if I'd even do that. Maybe even a third. Like, there's too much risk with Demko, and even if he does turn out to be decent, you don't have him locked up, and there's no guarantee he'd even want to re-sign here, knowing that Zavarg and Bjarnason are on the way as well, so he knows his time here would be limited. So there's a risk in not even re-signing a guy like that, so I'd be very with that. I think Demko would want some stability on his future contract with whatever his next team is if he were to be moved. Vanacek makes some sense. Ilya Samsonov, as you mentioned, makes some sense. I'm staying far the fuck away from that goaltender, Alexander Georgiev, out in San Jose, and Philip Grubauer out there as well. Keep those 2 away from me. No and no. I'd rather run Fedotov there.
Yeah.
Jake Allen, I'd like Allen, but I feel like it's just going to turn into an arms race for him. So I think the guy that makes the most sense is Alex Lyon, and that ends up being the guy that they get. I would like another physical, big, bulky bridge defenseman. That's something I think that this team needs to look at. There's a few names out there. I know he's up there in age, but maybe a guy like a TJ Brody for a 1 or 2 year deal. Even him, I'm not 100% sure on.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking younger, Yoki Haru. I think he's a UFA. There's a few guys, as Jamie mentioned. Nate Schmidt wouldn't be a bad call. I'm not looking for a long-term guy. If you're still looking down the trade line, if you can get a left-handed guy like Bowen Byram, that would be awesome. But I don't know if Buffalo does end up moving him. I felt like if they were going to move him, it would have been during the trade, the NHL draft. So we'll see there. And then the last thing is maybe a third-line center for the time being. Like the few names that have been mentioned, Adam Gaudette has been talked about out from Ottawa. Christian Dvorak would be an okay 3C. I mean, he's a good guy in the dot from what I've heard. Just a few names to throw out there. That's definitely third on the list is at third line center, just as a bridge again, so you're not rushing guys. And then obviously my wet dream is one day having Claude Giroux come back for one last. I know it's not happening. I know I'm not deluding myself. The only chance that does happen is maybe in his last year, the team's competing and he's a bottom sixer at that point, and they bring him on for his final year at the deadline or something like that. But I know that's not happening this free agency. I think he'll ultimately end up re-signing in Ottawa despite the current differences. But yeah, those are the spots I look at. But Lyon for goalie, and there's a few other guys maybe on defense that I mentioned as well. I love take one last shot at Byram, but I don't think that ends up happening. And then a 3C stopgap guy at least for a year or two until you have some of your kids ready to come up. Anything else to add on free agency before we wrap things up here?
Actually, a couple things, like, because we were talking about Demko before, and like we said, there were rumors that like Vancouver might want to sign him. So if Vancouver actually does like end up re-signing him, so then like what happens with Kevin Lankinen? Like, is he gonna? I'm assuming they're gonna keep Lankinen because like he's actually a legit starter. Maybe he's not a high-end starter, but he's at least a legit starter.
Better than anything we got.
Yeah, exactly. So like, but then like, would they be willing to trade Arthur Shilovs? Like, guy just won the Calder Cup with their AHL affiliate. Plus, he won the and whatever the MVP is for their playoffs.
Their version of Conn Smythe,
yeah, their version of the Conn Smythe. So if they do, like, I'm assuming they probably wouldn't. They'll probably just keep him in the minors for one more year as like Demko insurance in case like they re-sign Demko and just bust his knee again. But that's something I would keep an eye on. And like I think like you mentioned, like UPL Usa-Pekka Luukkonen from Buffalo. If these rumors are true and they're looking to shop him too, I'm like, if I'm the Flyers, I figure out a way to get that guy. Like I'm a big fan of his. Actually, I'm a really big fan of his. He put up some pretty good numbers in Buffalo. Like they tailed off a bit this year, but like I think it's just Buffalo. Like that just like, ends up getting these guys.
You think I am not calling him by his name if we trade him? You think I'm bad at botching names now? I'm just calling him UPL every fucking time. You will not get me trying to pronounce his name.
No, but like look, honestly, but look at Allmark. Like I remember Allmark when he was in Buffalo. Now he did fight injuries, but when he was healthy, he put up really good numbers in Buffalo on a really bad Buffalo team. And that's actually a guy that back in the day I was like, man, the Flyers should really look into this guy. And like, well, I guess obviously they never did. And like, look, he had success in Boston, and now he's in Ottawa. He's having success in Ottawa. But yeah, like if for whatever reason he's available, like the Flyers should really jump on that. And just one last thing, quick, because you were mentioning like centers like Dvorak, and there's even like Pia Suter who's available too. That I think, and like obviously Tocchet knows him really well from last year in Vancouver. The only thing why I wouldn't is because I think these guys would want term. They would want money. They would want term. And unless like maybe Dvorak, maybe because he didn't have the best year last year in Montreal, so maybe he would be willing to take a shorter,
like a 1-2 year deal for a guy like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, and I don't really want to block our guys. Plus, we have like I said, we have Noah Cates that could play that 3C role for at least for the time being. So yeah, that's why I just don't think they would go center.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting offseason. I definitely think that I don't think they're done. I do think outside the goalie thing, I do think they have one more decent move up their sleeve. But yeah, with that being said, that is going to wrap things up for this episode of Flyer Gonna Flyer. I don't know if you want to call this a 45th or 46th episode because we had the Zegras special. I guess we'll call this 46. We'll call the Zegras episode 45 just to stick with the cover. But yeah, that's going to wrap things up here. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share with us over the draft, what you may have agreed or disagreed with me, Eric, or Jamey's points, please let us know. Any guys you might be willing to potentially target in free agency, maybe even some topics you'd like for us to potentially talk about in a future episode. But yeah, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you all for tuning in. And as always, let's go Flyers. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.